My elder sister was trapped in a fire while secretly meeting her lover, and I exerted tremendous effort to rescue her. Yet, fearing her affair would be exposed, she turned around and falsely accused me of setting the fire. The matriarch condemned me for attempting to murder my elder sister, declaring my heart deserved execution. To protect my sister, my father demanded I atone with my life. Even the third prince, the adulterer I had also rescued, forced me to bow my head and confess my crimes willingly, just to beg for a whole corpse. Confess your motherfucking crimes. My ass, furious, I drove a hairpin into the third prince's neck, demanding he return the dog's life I had saved, and with the crime of assassinating a prince, I gifted the Marquis's household a full family execution. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment before my elder sister was trapped in the sea of flames. Recalling her passionate affair with the third prince, I tactfully locked the door for them, allowing them to become a pair of thoroughly scorched lovebirds. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. I have matters to discuss with the third prince. You wait here. Dare to spread a single word, and you'll pay with your skin. Get lost, just as in my previous life. My elder sister Yun Fengfei pushed me away despite all warnings to secretly meet with the third prince in the abandoned courtyard. That was when I realized I had been reborn, and I had returned to the very day of grandmother's birthday banquet. On this very day in my past life, Yun Fengfei had similarly ignored all dissuasion to rendezvous with the third prince in that derelict garden. Yet she had already been bestowed by His Majesty as the fourth prince's concubine. This reckless act placed our family's future and every member's head beneath the executioner's blade. Her father, knowing of her fondness for the third prince's refined and elegant demeanor, and their secret close interactions, feared she might lose control of her emotions on such a night and cause a scandal. Thus, he ordered me and her wet nurse to follow closely behind, intending to prevent her from meeting the third prince in private. Yet, under the pretext of needing to change her water-stained dress, she dismissed the wet nurse and then rushed headlong to the deserted courtyard without a backward glance. Seeing my desperate attempts to dissuade her, she viciously slapped me twice across the face and even threatened me with self-harm. She declared that if I dared to stop her, she would slash her own face and frame me for attempting to harm her. Vowing to make my life a living hell, I hesitated to act for fear of causing collateral damage, and no longer dared to stop her. Proudly, she strode into the desolate courtyard without even a backward glance. With a loud crack, the heavy wooden door slammed shut, firmly locking this unwelcome nuisance outside. But before the time it took to finish a cup of tea, flames erupted in the courtyard. My half-sister's wanton moans turned into panicked screams, each more urgent than the last. Fearing that she and the third prince might come to harm, which would result in my father skinning me alive and implicating the entire Marquis household, I, who had been waiting outside the gate, hastily climbed over the wall to intervene. Only then did they realize that in their recklessness, they had knocked over the oil lamp. The tung oil flared up instantly, engulfing half the house in flames and completely blocking their escape. Their clothes in disarray, they could only scream in panic. Utterly losing their composure, in desperation, I soaked my cloak in water from the lotus vat and plunged into the sea of flames, determined to rescue them one by one. But those two, cruel and ungrateful to the core, not only snatched my cloak to shield themselves as they fled the inferno, but also abandoned me without a second thought. While everyone was rushing over, fearing their illicit affair would be exposed, they turned the tables and falsely accused me of setting the fire. I was rescued by the servants, with not a patch of unburnt skin left on half my body. The pain left me collapsed on the ground, barely clinging to life. Yun Fengfei, wearing only her undergarments, huddled beneath my cloak and wept with pearly tears streaming down her face. I knew Sister Yueli had feelings for the third prince, but your mother came from a lowly background and died in disgrace. How could you ever be worthy of His Highness? I merely offered well-intentioned advice, saying we couldn't let the entire Marquis's household be shamed by your selfish desires. Who could have imagined you'd harbor such hatred that you'd try to burn me alive? I'm your elder sister, why would I ever harm you? How could you be so vicious? Had it not been for the third prince risking his life to save me today, I fear I would never have been able to fulfill my filial duties to my parents again. At the madam's signal, The entire courtyard of servants stepped forward to defend the eldest young lady's injustice, even deliberately listing all my malicious acts against my legitimate sister in public to seek fairness, the venomous snake hidden unexpectedly in my legitimate sister's quilt, the centipede quietly lying in her teacup, and the fine needles concealed in her clothes all were attributed to me, the utterly wicked one, yet in truth, every single one of these incidents was actually the bullying and humiliation that Yun Fengfei had inflicted upon me. The entire courtyard of guests, hearing only one side of the story, accused me of being malicious, looking down on my suffering as worse than death, and scolded me for bringing it upon myself. The mistress spared no effort in playing the victim before the crowd, condemning me for the heinous crime of murdering my elder sister. Claiming that having my face disfigured by fire was just retribution, even my father, who knew the truth, feigned heartbreak to preserve my elder sister's reputation and the future of the marquisate, telling me not to embarrass them further, since my name was already ruined. He urged me to stop struggling and simply die to atone, leaving some dignity for the marquisate. The third prince, whom I had saved, now stood with the heroic air of a savior, crouched beside me, sighing as he pressured me to confess willingly so I could at least keep my body intact. Looking at my face, burned to a crisp by the flames after he snatched my cloak, he shook his head repeatedly. With a face like that, even I would have nightmares. How could anyone favor you? Admit your guilt, Yun Yueli. This is your fate for not knowing your place. Admit your motherfucking guilt. Consumed by hatred, I pulled out a hairpin and, with all my strength, drove it swiftly and precisely into his neck. The moment blood sprayed, a blade pierced through my chest as well. We collapsed together in a pool of blood, his eyes filled with disbelief. And both of us drew our last breath. Thus, I repaid him for the life he saved from the flames, that dog's life of mine. But the crime of assassinating the Empress's only son was unforgivable. Upon learning that her own sister had secretly seduced the third prince, bringing such calamity upon him, the Empress flew into a rage and ordered the execution of the entire Marquis's household, unable to contend with the overwhelming power that obscures the heavens, nor to defeat their shameless collusion. And certainly no match for the heartless cruelty of a Marquis's household. All I could do was drag them all down to perish with my broken body. Never did I imagine I would return, watching Yun Fengfei, just as in my past life, unhesitatingly lock the courtyard gate. Only then did I curve my lips into a smile, touch my swollen cheek, and with concealed hatred, walk toward the locked gate, recalling how she and third Prince Wei Heng were like dry wood meeting fierce flames in their impatience. I tactfully added another copper lock to the door, thoroughly enabling them to become a pair of lovebirds consumed by passion. I tugged at the thumpthick iron chain to ensure this fateful lock binding Yun Fengfei and the third prince wouldn't be easily opened, then flung the key over the wall without hesitation before turning toward the lakeside. They brought this upon themselves. They deserved to live a fate worse than death. But I, having been reborn into this life, ought to seize my future and live well. At this very moment in my past life, Li Yueying, the prized daughter of the minister's household and the third prince's cousin, had seen him enter the rear courtyard and hurriedly followed. After circling the lakeside fruitlessly, she eventually arrived before the abandoned courtyard's gate. At the sight of me, her gaze turned icy cold. Was it you again who lured my cousin here? Seeing no one around, she dropped her usual gentle and charming facade, gritted her teeth, and slapped me across the face. A lowly slave gave birth to an even baser servant girl. With that cheap face of yours, you seduce my cousin into coming to the Marquis estate every day, just like your whore of a mother, ridden by thousands and slept on by tens of thousands. Gripping my chin, she declared triumphantly, I'd love to see if my cousin would scold me for smashing your pretty face. With that, she pulled out a sharp hairpin and pressed it against my cheek. I lowered my eyes in silence, but the dagger hidden in my sleeve had already slipped into my palm. In that split second, I'd already planned both the reason for silencing her and where to bury the body. At this critical moment, her personal maid hurried over. Young mistress, the madam is calling for you. When the maid saw me pinned down by her sharp hairpin, she frowned. This is the Marquis's estate. Even if she's treated as a servant, she's still the Marquis's illegitimate daughter. For the sake of your reputation, young mistress, think twice. Li Yuing reluctantly released her grip, yet still managed to tap my cheek with her hairpin as a warning. Cousin is not someone you should dare to fantasize about. If I hear again that you've lured him to drink tea, ride horses, or practice archery, I'll make sure you end up just like your mother. I'll let you keep this face for now. I, Li Yuing, swear that within 3 months, I'll have her skin split and flesh torn. She strode away haughtily, leaving me drenched in sweat and chilled to the bone. Beauty is the original sin when one is powerless, my mother was, and so am I. In this life, I refuse to be a lamb led to slaughter. Knowing Li Yuing was alone by the lake searching for her beloved cousin, I naturally made sure the two would never part, rotting together. Silently standing in the shadows beneath a tree, I waited until she hurried past before lunging unexpectedly from behind and pushing her into the lake. Splash! No one was around. Her splash, scream, and panic were known to no one but me. Hiding in the shadows, only when she was nearly exhausted and the nanny was about to catch up did I leap into the lake. Saving her was genuine, but so was teaching her a lesson. I, a weak woman, couldn't pull or drag her. It was perfectly reasonable that while dragging the struggling woman to bump against the rocks at the bottom of the lake, I accidentally broke her fingers, accidentally smashed her back, and accidentally slashed her thigh. Covered in wounds, the excruciating pain made her struggle even more violently, but with her collar gripped from behind, choking her half to death, her desperate attempts to push me away only made her choke on the water even worse. Even as she struggled with all her might, I deliberately loosened my grip. Her face slammed straight into the rockery, and her entire body went completely still. A faint scent of blood reached me, and I guessed she must have ruined her face and passed out from the pain. She had believed my elder sister's lies meant to cover up her own indiscretions, and had accused me of seducing the third prince. Even as I knelt and begged for mercy, even as I explained myself 1,000 ways, she refused to let me off. Colluding with my elder sister, she made me hold scalding hot tea, burning blisters all over my hands. Forced to stand guard in the thunderstorm, I fell gravely ill. She even made me kneel and eat, bite by bite, pastries that even the third prince's dogs would refuse. Even the only maid who truly cared for me was forced by them to jump into the lake to retrieve a hairpin. She never surfaced again. There were times when I resisted, and she would join my elder sister in slandering me before our stepmother and father. Confinement, starvation, even a severe beating that left me bedridden for half a month. I've endured it all. The mere thought of her detestable, haughty expression makes me gnash my teeth in hatred. I'm different from her. She waited for the right moment to ruin my face in our past life. But I don't wait for moments, I create them. Right here, right now, I'll seize the ecstasy of vengeance. Enduring humiliation only led to a miserable death last time. So in this life, don't blame me for being utterly ruthless. I lifted her body and slammed it against the rockery again and again, until she went limp, her flesh battered beyond recognition. Only then did I stop. So this is how liberating it feels to be a complete and utter madman. This was something my past self, always yielding to others and swallowing grievances, could never have imagined. I felt so exhilarated that I couldn't help but flash a triumphant smile in the pitch-black depths of the water. Having vented my anger thoroughly, I didn't forget the real task at hand. Dragging the battered and bruised person, I finally surfaced, gasping for breath as I collapsed onto the shore. When I saw her nanny approaching with a lantern, I managed to call out with the faintest whisper, "Save, save them." By the time she shouted for help and a crowd rushed over to pull us up, Li Yuing was already drenched in blood. I feigned exhaustion and lay on the ground, choking up with what seemed like guilt as I said, "Miss Li misunderstood me. If she had known I was trying to save her, she wouldn't have struggled so fiercely. It's also my fault for being useless, wanting to help but lacking the strength." I subtly revealed the scrapes on my arm, the fingernail marks on my neck, and even my blooded knees. Fortunately, Li Yuing had often caused trouble for me before. At the sight of my injuries, everyone assumed she had refused my goodwill and struggled so violently during the rescue that we both ended up wounded. In pitch darkness, it was impossible to see anything underwater, so crashing into the rockery and sustaining such severe injuries was understandable. Someone quickly came to my defense. Second Miss Yoon bravely plunged into the water alone to save someone without regard for her own safety. That alone is commendable, despite her injuries. She refused to let go and dragged the person back to shore. Few young ladies in the capital could have done the same. Truly remarkable. Without second Mrs. Rescue, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Saving someone from peril, she's a heroine among women, proving that courage knows no gender. Li Yueying opened her eyes only to see her own battered body and half-ruined face, while I, whom she despised the most, had become the heroic woman praised by noble ladies. She must have been fuming with rage. If she were to hear that her beloved cousin had also met with misfortune, she would likely find life even more unbearable. At this thought, I nearly burst out laughing. Only when I saw the flames rising from the desolate courtyard did I finally curl my lips in satisfaction before passing out. Doubtless, the hammer of fate had already fallen upon Yun Fengfei's head. As for me, who had always been her scapegoat, I could do nothing to help this time. When I awoke again, I heard the abandoned courtyard had caught fire. Pressing the most valuable jade thumb ring into the guiding maid's hand, I couldn't help but ask urgently, "How is the young mistress?" Seeing no one around, she quietly told me, "The eldest young lady and the third prince chased the thieves into the abandoned courtyard, where they were locked in by the thieves. A fire ruined the young lady's body, and the third prince's as well. Poor third prince. I fear he has lost his chance at the Eastern Palace." Though the thieves were executed, the Empress is furious and seems intent on making trouble for the Marquis's household. When the madam saw the young lady's tragic state, she fainted on the spot and has yet to wake. The Marquis is overwhelmed with troubles both inside and outside the household. Hearing that all my enemies are suffering makes me feel much better. Everyone in the capital is shrewd. How could they not know what a man and woman hiding alone in a secluded courtyard are up to? Catching thieves? Have all the servants of the Marquis's household died out, or have the third prince's guards gone extinct? Not bringing a single servant and even locking the courtyard gate, anyone could guess what this was about. Those noble young ladies who had previously accused me of coveting the third prince suddenly had an epiphany. Every time I invited the third prince for tea, flower viewing, or horseback riding, was there ever an occasion when my legitimate elder sister, Yun Fengfei, wasn't present? And the one who had been subtly spreading rumors about my improper intentions toward the third prince was none other than my legitimate elder sister, Yun Fengfei. Her facade of gentleness, elegance, and virtuous dignity was instantly torn to shreds. How could such a two-faced woman, who engaged in illicit affairs and brought disgrace to the family, ever dream of becoming a model for noble ladies? It was nothing but a fantasy. Father naturally considered all this, to eliminate any future troubles for his legitimate daughter. He even used his cloak to shield her face the moment she was dragged out of the fire, disheveled and in disarray. All that remained was to substitute the scapegoat, making me bear the infamy in her stead. But before the fire was completely extinguished, a servant rushed in to report, "Master, something terrible has happened. Miss Li accidentally fell into the water. Though Miss Yu Li rescued her, she's covered in blood and has fainted. The Li family's carriage has already left the estate, demanding that you give the Li family an explanation tomorrow." With this, the plan of substituting one thing for another had fallen through. Many ladies by the lakeside witnessed how I, drenched and covered in bloody scrapes on my arms, was carried away. The daughter crying out for him to wake up beneath his cloak could only be Yun Fengfei. How tragic for my dear elder sister, her reputation ruined, her body maimed. She'll likely become the family's discarded pawn. With such sisterly affection between us, I naturally rushed to see her, to witness her living death, and incidentally deliver one final, merciless stab. Smack! I had just stepped into my elder sister's room when Father's harsh slap struck me across the face. The metallic taste of blood flooded my mouth. Before I could even cover my swollen cheek, I heard Father spit out in rage, "Didn't I tell you to follow your elder sister's every step?" His beloved daughter was ruined. The pain turned his eyes bloodshot, his entire body trembling with fury. Seeing him looking utterly miserable as if mourning his own parents gave me immense satisfaction. When my mother died, I was even more devastated, yet with tears in my eyes, I feigned innocence and weakly replied, Elder sister said she had important matters to discuss with the third prince and forbade me from following. She found all sorts of excuses to send her nurses and nannies away, leaving only me. How could I dare stop the young miss?" As I spoke, I deliberately revealed the swollen red slap mark prominently displayed on my cheek. Of course, I'd given it to myself while changing clothes earlier. After all, if you can be ruthless to others, you must also be capable of being ruthless to yourself. The Marquis knew full well his daughter's character, yet he still looked down on me with cold indifference. Your elder sister has ruined her body and has no future left. Since you failed to watch over her, you shall not be spared lightly. Guards, Marquis. For the first time, I raised my head to meet his gaze. My elder sister's body is ruined, so her marriage with the fourth prince cannot proceed, but I am also father's daughter. The marriage arrangement between the Marquis's household and the fourth prince never specified Yun Fengfei by name. Why can't it be me? Yun Yueli. The Marquis's finger trembled violently as he pointed at me. Your sister is already suffering worse than death, yet you can't wait to snatch away her marriage and future. You are so vicious, just as your elder sister said. You truly are a calamity that cannot be allowed to remain, he roared. Guards, drag him out. So father intends to have the entire Marquis's household buried with her to express your paternal affection. Father stiffened, and I continued, with the third prince suffering such a calamity in the Marquis's residence, our household cannot escape blame regardless. Moreover, being locked in a deserted courtyard with my elder sister, then carried away in disarray, from where could my sister possibly extricate herself? If I were father, rather than waiting for the emperor's wrath to destroy years of his efforts in an instant, I'd take the initiative, sacrificing eldest sister alone to ensure the entire Marquis household's safety. How dare you? I laughed, pointing at eldest sister wrapped up like a rice dumpling on the bed, shaking my head with a sigh. In her current state, surely father doesn't still believe she's destined for a glorious future filled with admiration and suitors. Her reputation was ruined, her beauty destroyed. Even if her father possessed heaven-defying abilities, it wouldn't change the fact that Yun Fengfei had become a discarded pawn. With the emperor's wrath falling upon the Marquis's household, whether she and the entire estate would have a future remained uncertain. Her father had clearly realized this, his fists clenched tightly, brows deeply furrowed, yet he found himself unable to voice his suffering. I solemnly and deliberately whispered word by word, rather than sitting idly by, waiting to be judged and slaughtered. It's better to take the initiative and fight for a sliver of hope. If the third prince had ill intentions toward eldest sister, locking her in a desolate courtyard to humiliate her, thus bringing this calamity upon eldest sister and the Marquis's estate, in father's view, wouldn't the Marquis's estate still have a fighting chance? For the Marquis's estate to survive, father need only act swiftly, accurately, and ruthlessly, burning all bridges before His Majesty and the entire court. By seizing the advantage of public opinion and striking first, the power of gossip will deter the imperial family from acting rashly. The fate of the Marquis's estate might then take a different turn. His pupils trembled, filled with horror. But if that's the case, Fengfei won't survive. I shook my head. The Empress, to protect the third prince's reputation, will surely claim the two were deeply in love but were cruelly torn apart by the fourth prince's interference, lamenting the grievances and helplessness of this star-crossed pair. Your sister's life will be safe. The Marquis's household will not only remain unharmed but will also gain a marriage alliance in return, instead of entering the fourth prince's residence. Your sister will now enter the third prince's household. Doesn't this fulfill her heart's desire after all? The ever-smooth-tongued Marquis actually trembled all over in shock at my mere few words. That's your elder sister. If the Marquis's household seeks survival by trampling upon the third prince, how could she possibly live peacefully after entering his residence? I spread my hands helplessly and retorted, but if it were me being burned in that fire, what would father do to preserve the Marquis's peace? Personal feelings are insignificant compared to the Marquis's century-old reputation and over 100 lives. Father was first the Marquis of the Hu Mansion, the head of the Yun family, and only then the father of my elder sister. I, your daughter, am merely sharing your burdens. He understood, staggering step by step as he fled in panic, having clearly made the agonizing decision to sever flesh and bone. Now he too has tasted the pain and remorse of burying his own kin with his own hands. Wasn't he so composed when he watched my mother die before his eyes? Only by driving this knife precisely into the vital spot can he feel the same agony as I did. The Marquis's future outweighs all. since it made me perish in my past life, in this life I shall make him personally push his most beloved daughter into hell to a fate worse than death. Seeing the trembling fingertips of my legitimate elder sister on the bed, I knew she could hear me. With a smile, I leaned down and whispered cheerfully into her ear, "Did you hear that? It was father who personally chose the Marquis's mansion and future prospects, not you. Are you happy? Heaven's cruelty and earth's incompleteness, yet lovers finally united. This is father's gift to you. What to do? You always despised my mother's wretched face, but now you don't even have a face left." Did the fire burn painfully? Her tightly wrapped body trembled with belated fear as I clicked my tongue and shook my head, but with every dressing change, every glance in the mirror, even every memory of the adoration you once received, you'll find life more unbearable than death. Sister has always had the privilege of caprice. I suppose you can endure such consequences. Do make sure to live long and fully enjoy your dazzling remaining years, after this slow knife to the heart. I left her living death to the future dog-eat-dog struggle with the third prince, then turned away in satisfaction. Yet on the corridor back to my courtyard, I found myself face to face with the fourth prince, Wei Chen. He dangled the abandoned key to the desolate courtyard I'd thrown away, raising his brow slightly as he threatened me. "The door was well locked. Your swimming skills are decent, and your schemes are downright vicious, but what I admire most is your ability to recognize the tides. Though a foolish sparrow, you know to choose the right branch to perch on." Oh, so the venomous scorpion enjoys toying with people behind their backs. Quite pleased with yourself. When my malice takes your wretched life, I hope you'll still find it just as delightful. I urged my father to burn all bridges and trample the third prince into the mud. Are you satisfied now? Can you return what's mine? Wei Chen gave me a deep look before letting out a light chuckle. Then stepped closer to me one deliberate step at a time, pausing mid-step. He ignored my attempts to dodge and retreat, forcefully pinching my earlobe with his cold fingertips as he roughly shoved the earring he'd taken back into my piercing. Yet he deliberately fumbled as if lacking finesse, stabbing through my earlobe over and over until it was thoroughly pierced. "You took liberties scheming against me. Letting you see a little blood isn't too much, is it?" I gasped in pain, which seemed to amuse him, making him press even harder. "Don't move. If it won't go in, I'll have to toss it into the abandoned courtyard and tell my dear imperial brother whose handiwork his miserable state today is." My hands clenched tightly, my lips bitten until they bled, putting on a show of letting him vent his spite, until, in his moment of recklessness, my hand swiftly and precisely reached through his robe and seized his lower body. Baring my teeth, I smirked wickedly. "You may not know me, but someone who crawled out from hell isn't the least bit afraid of death." As his body stiffened, I merely applied slight pressure, and a muffled groan of pain escaped directly from between his lips, pressing close to his pale cheek. I exhaled warm breath and whispered, "You asked me to ruin the third prince, and I coaxed my father into doing it. In return, you naturally owe me protection, with so many people hating the third prince. Wouldn't we make a perfect pair? Does it really demean you? Without your protection I'm as good as dead, and while my death matters little, wouldn't making you accompany me in death be rather wasteful?" Anger crept up his brow as the dagger hidden in his sleeve silently slid into his palm. "Another one who wants me dead." I exerted force again, and this time, the pain made him cry out, "When you draw your blade, I can shatter your brilliant future." Believe it or not, he was at my mercy. Both afraid of the pain and terrified of being seen in such a humiliating state, panting heavily, he trembled as he wrapped his arms around my waist in an ambiguous embrace, leaning close to my blooded ear to ask, "What do you want?" "I'll return the earring and the key to you. From now on, we go our separate ways, with no debts between us." I smiled in satisfaction, turning slightly to sink my teeth viciously into his earlobe. Flesh ground between my teeth until the taste of blood filled my mouth. With an innocent smile, I whispered softly, "You don't understand me. Even if I were to die the next moment, this moment I must have blood for blood." Wei Chen trembled in pain, but as he reflexively shrank back, the excruciating agony from his lower body wrenched cold sweat from him. This wolf in sheep's clothing knew everything about last night's events, not only retrieving the keys I'd thrown away, but also stealing my earrings while I was unconscious and being carried back to my room. He even threatened me, saying, "If he doesn't die, I'll make sure he lives in disgrace and misery, otherwise, I'll throw this earring into the fire and send the key to your father's study. That unquenchable fire will finally have its outlet, do you understand? I want to see results before noon tomorrow." But when I urged my father to ruin the third prince's reputation, Wei Chen seemed dissatisfied, because I, this rootless, stemless sparrow, must now replace my sister who cuckolded him, leaping up to alight upon his lofty branch. The swallow perches on twigs, the swan soars high, what fault is there in this? Yet he would not consent. Seeing father already approaching from afar, I asked one final question. "Perhaps I can't offer you the future and happiness that a noble woman could provide, but with just 30% of my effort, I can ensure no one else gives you the future and happiness you desire. The fourth prince is a smart man, which will you choose? Perhaps my determined, innocent gaze as I bit my lip was too resolute, or perhaps my casually cruel methods were too ruthless. In the end, he didn't dare gamble his family's future against someone who had nothing to lose, and so he swallowed his hatred and yielded. "I promised to take you into my household. Now let go, hurry up and release me. I swear, if a third person sees this, I'll make sure you live a fate worse than death." So stubborn with your words, I gave a hard pinch, releasing abruptly when he yelped in pain while stepping back dramatically to announce, "Father, the fourth prince was just heading to your study." As Wei Chen brushed past me, his vicious glare seemed capable of devouring a person whole. How could I not know? Both are equally ruthless, but at least Wei Heng maintains a gentle facade in public. He doesn't even bother pretending. Yet, I'm not afraid. As he turned to glance at me while crossing the corridor, I raised my brows with a chilling smile and casually dangled his waist token, swiped from him moments ago, between my fingers. Silently, I mouthed the words, "We can die together." At this moment, his desire to kill me reached its peak, but I didn't care. Turning around, I walked back to the courtyard with light steps, just as he had threatened me if I threw his waist token into the fire. Whether he was the arsonist or not would no longer matter. The Empress would spare no effort to eradicate him completely. He's more impatient than I am. Right after discussing with father about switching my elder sister's betrothal to me, he found an excuse to come before me. But what reached me before his words were his icy hands, gripping my throat. He demanded through clenched teeth, "Will you hand it over, or shall I search you and then kill you?" I couldn't catch my breath. My face flushed crimson, yet I giggled incessantly. Wei Chen's hands trembled as he stared at me like I was a madwoman. Impatient, he began frantically searching me, my waist, sleeves, even my chest. "Where have you hidden it?" My fingertips brushed over his bloodless hand, stroke after stroke, until, just as his hair stood on end and his eyes widened in shock, I drove my knee hard into his groin, forcing him to abruptly release his grip. "Do you know why? Despite your vicious mind and ruthless methods, you could never outmatch Wei Heng, who always appears so dignified in public." Clutching his throbbing groin, his face drained of color, he couldn't even muster a response. I then said with a laugh, "Because you're foolish enough yourself." He grew furious and was about to explode in anger when I casually turned to pour him a cup of tea. "If I were you, holding something that makes others restless, I wouldn't rush to deliver myself to their doorstep. Let them exhaust all their efforts, go mad with rage, yet fail to even touch the hem of your garment. Oh, are you afraid things might change if we wait too long?" I forced a cup of tea into his hand. "I'm not afraid, because I moved the items immediately. I can die, but those things won't. Just because the fire site is unusable doesn't mean other places are. People die in the capital every day. Just plant them on some wrongfully killed person from the third prince's residence. And the frame-up is complete, isn't it?" Wei Chen understood. The waist token I sent out of the mansion has now become a blade hanging over his head, constantly threatening his position and life. His fingers gripping the teacup turned white. "I've already discussed with your father to remove your maternal family's criminal status, grant your mother the position of legal wife, and allow you to enter my prince's mansion as a concubine. But I want more than that." His eyes suddenly lifted, filled with utmost malice. "What more do you want?" I brushed off non-existent dust from his shoulder and whispered softly, "I want to enter the imperial palace, to stand above all others, with you, of course." Splash! The teacup fell to the ground, shattered into pieces. Wei Chen's eyes brimmed with murderous intent. Who taught you this? Ignoring him, I sat down beside him with a sigh and said, we are the same kind of people, we should aim for greater things. Wei Heng has the Empress's protection, and even when he openly humiliates you, your mother only urges you to endure it again and again. That's why he acts without restraint. He took your elder sister, do you think he won't take your future principal consort too? What if he wants your life as well? Endure, how long will you keep enduring? You hate him to the core, so much that you poured tung oil in the abandoned courtyard to burn him alive, so much that you tried to use our father's hand to ruin him. Why can't you be bolder and seize everything that rightfully belongs to him? Once you sit on that throne, who could dare oppose you? See, I succeeded too, didn't I? As long as you're ruthless enough, as long as you're willing to risk everything, your elder sister's marriage and you, they're all mine now. Everything I knew about Wei Chen came from the fragments of scorn Wei Heng uttered while entwined in affection with my elder sister. He said he was a wolf lurking in the shadows, fierce and venomous, biding his time, as if always ready to pounce and bite. But Wei Chen was a wolf with a crippled leg, full of ferocity but lacking the courage and audacity to fight back. All his courage and boldness had been thoroughly crushed and worn away by his useless mother, at that time. I thought to myself, so it was a wolf after all. If I were fortunate enough to marry him in place of my elder sister, I would have countless ways to slowly tame a solitary and ferocious wolf, making him fight and strive for me, for instance, by being even more ruthless, more solitary, and more mercilessly insane than him, utterly forcing him to stand by my side. Never did I expect that in this lifetime, my scheme would actually succeed. Wei Chen fled in panic, terrified by my madness. Watching his flustered retreat, I knew I'd already half succeeded. Pulling his waist token from his thigh, I sneered with contempt. So what if he's resourceful, a hollow scarecrow who wouldn't dare strike even with his enemy right under his nose, still needs to rely on me in the end? Father cried in justice and dashed his head against the palace pillar, seeking justice for his beloved daughter with his death. That day, Wei Chen knelt outside the Hall of Mental Cultivation and refused to rise. Determined to annul his engagement with the Marquis's household, our grandmother and the Empress Dowager were bosom friends who had arranged this marriage alliance while still young maidens. Since it remained unfulfilled between His Majesty and my father, it must be settled in our generation. Wei Chen wouldn't accept my elder sister, the legitimate daughter whose reputation and virtue were compromised. The only one he could take was me. Yet Great Chu's laws strictly forbade marriage between nobility and commoners. My aunt was a branded lowly slave, though she protected me by claiming she had seduced my father while drunk and borne this evil fruit, then drowned herself in the river, severing all ties with me. Yet within the Marquis's household, my position remained awkward. Though the Marquis's daughter, I was also my elder sister's maid, even in marriage. The best I could hope for was to rely on the Marquis's household and wed some wealthy merchant. His Majesty was clearly caught in a dilemma. At this very moment, a long-lost solitary copy of a sage's manuscript was presented from Qingling City. Among its records was an ancient poem that matched word for word with the acrostic poem that had planted thoughts of rebellion in my maternal grandfather's heart. Back then, my grandfather hanged himself in prison, leaving behind a blood-written letter crying out his wrongful conviction, a grievance finally vindicated today. My father possesses no shortage of schemes and methods. It's merely a question of whether the matter warrants his intervention. Just like that, he effortlessly gave me everything I had desperately sought in my past life but could never obtain. His Majesty resolved the urgent crisis with a grand gesture, exonerating my maternal grandfather and his 3 wrongfully executed friends. Moreover, recognizing my noble act of risking my life to save the general's daughter, he bestowed upon me the title of County Princess and betrothed me to the 4th prince as his principal consort. He offered immense consolation to my father, causing his closest friends to abandon their suicidal plan of dashing themselves to death against the Golden Palace pillars in protest. When I returned home in glorious triumph, having gained every advantage, my disgraced stepmother, who had lost everything, was in the midst of a hysterical meltdown. A teapot smashed violently at my feet as she screamed with bloodshot eyes, wild with fury, climbing over my daughter's flesh and blood. How dare you? You were my childhood sweetheart. You were the one who begged shamelessly to marry me, you were the one who promised a lifetime of devotion, yet it was you who dallied with another on your southern trip. You who set up a household with that scholar's daughter in Qingling, from beginning to end, it was you who betrayed me, betrayed my love. How dare you still trample on my daughter's flesh to chase power and wealth? Father spared no expense, crashing headfirst into the coiling dragon pillar until he was drenched in blood. The imperial physician guarded him for 2 full hours before he regained consciousness. Now that he's just opened his eyes, medicine bowls are smashed, teacups shattered. Even the bedside screen lies overturned on the ground, trampled into fragments. He keeps his eyes tightly shut, overwhelmed by guilt and suppressed pain, unable to utter a single word. The legal wife comes from an aristocratic family, always looking down her nose at others, scorning all low-born women. She never stops cursing my birth mother as a shameless slut who climbed into bed without propriety or dignity. But now, her hysterical, almost madwoman-like demeanor left no room for propriety or dignity. My sarcasm was undisguised. Cutting her to the quick, she rushed over and slapped me, sending all the hairpins tumbling from my head. You wretch, it was you who egged him on to steal Fengfei's future. You, why didn't you die with your mother? I should never have kept you alive. I let out a light laugh, rather than blaming me for stealing your legitimate sister's future and marriage. You should blame yourself for devoting all your energy to the women around father. Not a single word he spoke to others, nor any slight favor he showed, not even a maid lingering half a step longer while serving tea. None escaped your notice. But in all those moments, did you ever teach your daughter propriety and decorum? If not for your neglect, if not for your praise that she could do no wrong, if not for your indulgence that let her grow arrogant and lawless, would she have come to this end today? In the end, you are unworthy of being the matriarch. Your eyes saw only father, not the survival of the marquisate, not the rise and fall of the family, much less any far-sighted planning. You ruined her, it was you. Her body swayed, but she suddenly lifted her head. Don't try to bewitch me, you're just like your whore of a mother, especially skilled at deluding men. The Marquis had his heart stolen by her, and now you want to steal mine too. I won't let you and your mother destroy me and then ruin my daughter too. I'll kill you. She pulled out her hairpin and suddenly lunged at me. I had already spotted grandmother's figure. Ignoring father's shocked cry, I deliberately threw myself onto her hairpin. She wasn't fully prepared. A hairpin that hadn't been sharpened could barely draw blood, let alone take my life. Yet I still let out a scream in front of my grandmother, collapsing to the floor in tears. Grandmother, save me. Yu Li is so frightened. In my grandmother's eyes, the rise and fall of the Marquis's household outweighed all else. She shamelessly went before the Empress Dowager to demand the fulfillment of the marriage arrangement, all to elevate the Marquis's household to greater heights. Even if Yun Fengfei were ruined, she would never relinquish this marriage alliance with the 4th prince. Now that I've obtained the title of county princess and become the 4th prince's principal consort, nothing could be more perfect for her. Seeing me curled up on the ground, my eyes brimming with pitiful tears as I pleaded for help, whether to put on a show and grant me a favor, or to genuinely vent her resentment toward her stepmother, she didn't hesitate to shout, "The matriarch has lost virtue. Take her to the ancestral hall to reflect on her misdeeds before our ancestors." Father struggled to plead for mercy, so I cried out, "Grandmother is righteous. If this matter reaches His Majesty's ears, he might think the Marquis's household harbors discontent toward him. These are troubled times indeed. The Marquis's household must not suffer any further mishaps due to mother's madness." Father's lips trembled slightly, yet he swallowed back the unspoken words. After the legal mother was confined to the ancestral hall, I couldn't wait to share this wonderful news with my dear elder sister. Lying on the bed, every breath brought her pain, making life worse than death. Beneath the thick layers of gauze, that face had long become unrecognizable. She still dreams of rising above others, hoping the 3rd prince will utterly destroy me. I laugh at her foolishness. You think innocence speaks for itself. Little do you know how terrifying public opinion can be. After today, the whole world will know that Wei Heng disgraced you in that desolate courtyard. Father forced the issue with his own life to secure you a marriage as the 3rd prince's concubine. If you die, it will be seen as the royal family silencing a witness. If you live, You'll forever be Wei Heng's stain and shame. The Empress is caught between a rock and a hard place. She's swallowing her disgust to accept you. Yet she'd love to devour your flesh and drink your blood. The third prince, framed and furious, is grinding his teeth in hatred, eager to skin you alive and make you wish for death. Rely on him. Ridiculous. When you were whole and untainted. He wouldn't sully his reputation to claim you. Now, in this state, do you really think he'd spare you a second glance? Father has already sided with the fourth prince, Wei Chen. Do you honestly believe you still have a chance to kill his principal wife? Instead of wasting time on these delusions, why not visit the ancestral hall to see your deranged mother? Who knows, each meeting might be your last. Oh, but wait, you've lost all face. Better not go. Lest your mother mistakes you for a ghost and dies of fright. Yun Fengfei trembled with rage, but the pain made her movements as she tried to turn and strike me resemble the sluggish writhing of a giant silkworm. Remembering how she had forced me to kneel in a row with a dog, comparing who was more loyal, I sneered mercilessly. How disgusting. Right now, you look like a squirming maggot. Even Wei Heng would probably vomit at the sight of you like this. I watched him break down. Listened to her futile roars, saw her wounds tear open, blood gushing, and endured the agony of peeling off the bandages and reapplying medicine. Only then did I leave, smiling. Wei Chen was waiting for me. He extended his slender hand toward me. You've gotten everything you wanted from me. What about what I want? Shamelessly, I clasped his hand. What's the hurry, since I'm already yours? Do you think these things can fly away? He was left speechless, choking on his words. During my repeated attempts to tame the wolf, I was bitten and pounced on, but eventually he grew much gentler, no longer baring his teeth at me. My mother feared complications might arise, so she begged His Majesty to have the wedding completed before Labor Festival. I nodded with an obedient smile. I'll embroider my wedding dress carefully, waiting for you to come marry me. He was left utterly speechless. With my wedding approaching, the entire household was bustling with frantic preparations. Seeing their overwhelmed state, I knew the moment had come. While out shopping, I spent a fortune using Wei Chen's waste token to forcibly obtain some extraordinary medicine, though it was priceless and hard to come by. Since it was bought with the Emperor's reward and for my own comfort and happiness, I was more than willing. Good things, of course, should be shared. After returning to the estate, I sent it to the ancestral hall as an offering to my legal mother. The moment she saw me, she flew into a frenzy, wishing she could smash me to death with the ancestral tablets. Yet I stood firm and unyielding, looking down at her increasingly haggard and aged face, sneering repeatedly. You're no match for my mother after all, far inferior in looks, temperament, and talent. Perhaps that's why father fell in love at first sight, keeping it from you back in the capital, and married mother in Qingling City, setting up a little home together, you new pair, at dusk in the courtyard. Crows cry among willow trees. I remember that person, plucking pear blossoms under the moon. In my memory, there was a huge pear tree in the yard. Have you ever seen it? These few words seemed to strike a nerve in this noblewoman. Pointing at me, she erupted in curses. You wretched creature. Just as vile and shameless as she was, so what if she was cunning? She still died a miserable death. A bunch of lowly peasants from backwater villages daring to compare themselves to me. A third-generation descendant of scholarly officials, serves her right to be thrown into a brothel and rot to death. My hands trembled beneath my sleeves, yet my face remained composed as I clicked my tongue and shook my head. Don't use my own tricks against me. After all, everything I say is the truth. While your lies can't possibly wound me. Her laughter grew increasingly triumphant and loud, until she looked at me as if I were a joke, gloating. Your mother sought to atone with death, abandoning you at the Marquis's gate so that under public scrutiny, the household couldn't deny you, forcing them to free you from slavery, grant you security, even make you a noble daughter to live in luxury. Such immense shame cast upon me. I hated her so much I could have eaten her flesh and drunk her blood. How could I let her die in peace? It was just a matter of spending some silver to hire a few skilled swimmers to risk their lives and fish her out. She was rescued in no more than the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. I personally sold her to the lowest brothel in Yangmen County, where she became a cheap whore that any rough bandit or lowly soldier could abuse for a handful of coins. Didn't she love seducing men? In the end, She died on a man's bed. I suppose she got what she wanted. She looked at me with triumphant satisfaction. So, the world was right about you. You're just the filthy spawn of a rotten life. Your mother was a worthless slut, ridden by thousands and slept on by tens of thousands. The truth I begged for in vain until death in my past life, I finally know today. That's why Yun Feng Fei always cursed my mother as a worthless slut who slept with thousands, why the legal wife always sneered and said she deserved it. Why my father remained silent yet with a trace of guilt, giving me some way to survive. They all knew about mother's tragic death. My tears seemed to please her. She straightened her back with the same haughty posture Yun Feng Fei had used to suppress me, adjusting her temple hair with an air of superiority as she said, "What status does she have to compete with me? Your father even wanted to bring her into the manor as a concubine, when he vowed to be devoted to me alone. I was the most dazzling noble lady in the capital, the envy of everyone. How could I let her trample me into the mud in an instant?" The corners of her lips curled into a venomous smile as she spoke with ruthless delight. My father merely made a trip south, and with a single literary inquisition, he wiped away all traces for me. It was her delusional obsession that doomed dozens to lose their heads. So she deserves to die, deserves to live a fate worse than death, and you. Before she could finish, I could bear it no longer. With a sudden flurry of punches, I struck her abdomen again and again. As she gasped in pain, I seized her jaw and forced the pill down her throat. Then I covered her mouth, watching in satisfaction as she swallowed in terror before releasing my grip. She clawed at her throat, shrieked accusations, screamed hysterically. I turned a blind eye to it all. Only when crimson bloomed across her cheeks did I finally curl my lips and say, "Since you treated my mother this way, you should have no complaints about receiving the same treatment. Moreover, your dear husband never once mentioned his family in the capital. He deceived my mother, yet you couldn't bear to kill him. Instead, you killed a woman who, like you, was hurt and deceived by men. You're truly weak and useless. I will make you repay everything you owe my mother." Her pupils trembled as my hand struck the back of her neck. Then, with a smile, I pushed open the door. The two watchdog servants of my stepmother, whom I had just gifted a box of pastries, were scratching their heads in restless agitation. I laughed and said, "Mother wants you inside. She has instructions for you." Though slightly bewildered, the two men pushed the door open with hesitant suspicion. The next instant, I slammed the door shut behind them and locked it tight. They pounded on the door and shouted, but I turned a deaf ear. Thanks to the Hu residence's chaos and my stepmother's contempt for my submissive demeanor, I was given so many opportunities to exploit, until the voices gradually faded, replaced by the sound of panting. Later, they found my stepmother collapsed on the ground, her robes half undone. The potency of the medicine overpowered reason. As the sound of silk tearing rang out, I unlocked the door, pushed it halfway open, and left the courtyard without looking back. It was time to deliver her a fate of utter ruin, a living death. Father was indeed standing silently beneath the corridor, taking in the swelling and redness on my cheek. He understood. Since childhood, she's been spoiled and domineering, never tolerating the slightest grievance. You've already given her retribution and vented your anger sufficiently. Don't make things difficult for her in the future. As your father, I can elevate you to that position, and I can certainly pull you down from it. One should look forward. You're a smart person. You ought to understand that mutual support is the only way to go further. I concealed the coldness in my eyes and obediently agreed. Then I deliberately said, "Mother knew the pastries were sent by father, so she threw them all to the guards. I'm afraid we'll go hungry tonight." Father, filled with remorse, dismissed me and personally carried a bag of the main wife's favorite pastries to the ancestral hall. But what awaited him was nothing short of a storm. Indeed, in less time than it takes for an incense stick to burn, word spread that chaos had erupted in the ancestral hall. Two guards who always relied on their stepmother's protection to bully others were dragged out by the Marquis and beaten to death with clubs. The stepmother, overwhelmed with anxiety, fainted and was sent overnight to a country estate to recuperate. Rumor has it that the stepmother was beaten unconscious by her own husband, her face swollen and bruised, several teeth knocked out, and even one of her thigh bones brutally kicked and broken. A man can betray anyone he pleases, but when others betray him in the same way, he cannot tolerate it in the slightest. What childhood sweetheart affection, what unwavering love, what lifelong marital vows. In the end, none could compare to his own dignity and pride. When the lowly servant who had carved the inscription pleaded at the mansion gate, he refused to endure those 30 lashes, much less become the laughingstock of his colleagues by associating with a servant. He stood by as his legal mother drenched my mother in filthy accusations, that she seduced him while he was drunk and thus bore this cursed fruit me. Yet it was he who, beneath the flowers and moonlight, begged my mother to bear him a son, with his wife gone and son crippled. The Marquis in his middle years couldn't quite bear such agony, his hair turning white overnight. When he regained his composure, he suspected me. That very night, he summoned a familiar imperial physician to conduct an examination, yet nothing was found truly worthy of its weight in gold. The antidote placed in the incense burner eradicated the poison within moments, leaving not a single trace behind. After father fell seriously ill and confined himself indoors, grandmother entrusted the household affairs to me. I spared no effort in adding another type of medicine to Yun Fengfei's flesh-regenerating ointment. The medicine had no other effect except to cause unbearable itching. Yun Fengfei, already covered in wounds, scratched frantically